What comes to your mind when you hear the term self-help? For me, it's a lot of motivational woo-woo, meditating under the stars on a beach in Bali nonsense. Just looking at the self-help section in the library or when I'm at the airport at a little bookstore can get to be a lot. There's so much there. What even is it? The term self-help sounds lovely. Who wouldn't want to help themselves? But what I found is that once you start digging into it, there are literally infinite books, even more podcasts, blogs, YouTubes, and they're all giving unlimited advice. There literally isn't enough time in the day. And then even more maddening is the fact that a lot of times the quote-unquote advice from these various sources can be completely contradictory to the exact advice you got from some other self-help resource. If only there was someone who could go through of all of this nonsense for you and help cut through the noise so you know where to go and what to focus on. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Levitin. I help high achievers who feel stuck bridge the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Traditional self-help doesn't work. It's either too rigid, too generic, or too overwhelming. My approach is different. I simplify change by making it so easy, it can't not happen. Using my easier framework, I'll help you create habits, routines, and behaviors that stick, so you can stop struggling and start thriving. It's that easy. Marie Forleo said, "Everything is figure-outable," which I agree with. There is a solution to every problem. The issue is that sometimes there's an overabundance of potential solutions, and that becomes a problem in itself. If you're already busy and low on time, parsing through the mountain of self-help data out there is just another task that ends up weighing you down rather than building you up. For me, it's a little different though. This is my job. So I make a point to read the books, to listen to the podcasts, to read the studies. And today I'm going to tell you the top 3 pieces of self-help advice that I've gotten from reading over 100 self-help books and testing out over 50 individual tactics. These 3 tactics, if implemented, will change your life and save you thousands of hours of reading and researching that I've already done for you. Let's dive in. Can I be honest with you for a second? I hate the term self-help. Let's just get that out of the way, out of the gate. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I mean, helping yourself is exactly what we're after. That's why I'm here. I just think that term has been so overdone and so overused. It's oversaturated. I don't know about you, but to me, the picture that self-help conjures up is just hippie meditation drum circles and endless piles of books on your nightstand that no one actually reads. And with all that, it's still a multi-billion-dollar industry. One that has helped millions of people change their lives for the better. My issue is that there's so much out there. It's impossible to know what's real, what's good advice, and what's just fluff. And even if you could tell, it would take a lifetime just to sort through it all. Because for every person that has gotten help or benefit from the self-help industry, I'd bet that there are 10, 20, maybe 100 who have bought the book or the course, made it 10 minutes into the podcast, and forgotten all about it. And if that's been you, that's fine. It's my assumption that that's most people. That's why I made this podcast. Fortunately for you, I love this stuff. I read the books, I watch the videos, I listen to the other podcasts. And one thing that I've worked on over my career as a coach is the ability to take complex ideas and distill them down in ways that are understandable for everyone. A lot of these are not my ideas. They're just a distillation of the hundreds of hours of ideas of others that I've taken in over the years. I read books by the handful. I listen to podcasts on 3x speed. I go to seminars and workshops on the weekends for fun. And I do all of that, and then I do my best to pick and choose the most actionable information to give to you here. Pieces I've found that I think will help you create positive change in your life. It's actually what I know will help you create positive change in your life. Because in addition to taking in all of this information, doing the reading, doing the listening, doing the stuff to learn, I'm in the fortunate position of being able to test this information because I've been in the field of helping people change for nearly 15 years. So I am able to put these theories to test. I'm able to give these strategies and practices to my thousands of clients over the years. And what I've been able to see is that Some stuff works, but most of it is BS. But for all of the duds out there, there are some things that are shining needles in the haystack, and that's what I'm going to lay out for you today. So here are the 3 most potent, most impactful pieces of self-help advice that I've come across in over a decade of coaching, reading, learning, and researching the best self-help tactics. These are things that will help you change your life for the better. The first is understanding the concept of spheres of influence. I first read about spheres of influence in my personal favorite self-help book, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you ever only have time to read one self-help book in your life, this is the one. Every other self-help book, in my opinion, is just trying to do what he did in this. If you read this, you really don't need any of the rest. But the spheres of influence work like this. If you're in a place where you can write, maybe pause this, grab a piece of paper and a pen, or screenshot this if you're not, and you can come back to this timestamp and do this exercise later.
Hey, real quick, we'll be back to the show in just a few seconds, but right now I have to ask you for a huge favor. If you're getting value out of this episode so far, take 2 seconds and share it with a friend. I mean, right now, literally, hit the little share button and send it in a text to your roommate or your cousin or your mom or your brother or your sister. Seriously, spread the love. If you like what you're hearing, then that's the best way that you can show support for this show. Because maybe you're like Eliza Kay, who said, "This podcast is both warm and inviting, but real enough to push and motivate me." Or you're like Dalton, who said, "Paul is an amazing host, and his podcast is a must listen." Don't you want to share this awesomeness with your friends and family? Don't be a gatekeeper. It only takes a second. It helps me grow and reach a new audience, and you seem like a genius friend who recommends new, awesome podcasts. We all win. All right, go send that text, and now let's get back to the show.
Regardless, here's how it works. Draw on the paper 3 concentric circles. So one big circle, one circle inside that, and an even smaller one inside that. Make the biggest circle as big as the entire page. Now think of all the things in your mind that you could spend your time working on, or that could take your attention. This could be your kids, your job, your in-laws, the state of geopolitics, the stock market, just literally everything, just brain dump. And as you think of these things, place each one into one of the 3 circles. The centermost circle is your sphere of control. In this circle, write down things you have complete and 100% control over. You can think of this as your own front yard. In your front yard, you can plant whatever you want. You can plant flowers, you can plant trees. If there's litter on your yard, you can go outside and clean it up. You don't have to ask for permission. You can let your kids play on it, you can pave over it, you can put up a basketball hoop, you can barbecue. It's all up to you. The second circle is your sphere of influence. Your sphere of influence are things that you can potentially influence, but are not 100% within your control. Think of this like your neighborhood. You might be part of a homeowners association or have the ability to vote and to speak in community meetings. So your voice does have an impact, but you can't say with 100% certainty that the things will go the way that you want them to all of the time. If you want a new playground set up down the block, you can rally the community, you can speak on it, you can help plan it, you can collect signatures on a petition, but you cannot say, make this happen and have it happen 100% of the time. So inside this circle, put, you guessed it, things that you can influence but not completely control. This could be things like your kid's schedule, your wife's schedule, your tasks at work. These are things that you have some say over, but other people do as well. And the third outermost circle is literally everything else. This is geopolitics. These things may very well affect you, but you do not have control over it. Even if you believe that the fast fashion industry and the factories in India and China and Pakistan are killing the planet, dumping toxic chemicals into the water supply and destroying millions of lives and nature all around the world, there's not really anything you can do about it, at least not from where you stand currently. So in this circle, the outermost circle, put all of the things that affect you, but you have no control over. And everything in your life will fall into one of those 3 circles. Now, obviously, you don't have to write everything in your life out right now, but just understand that everything does fall into one of these 3 categories. What you can control, what you can influence, and everything else. And if you notice, if you actually drew this out, the circle of control is the smallest, and that's for good reason. because very little lies within your direct control. And then influence is slightly bigger than that, as there are more things that you can influence than control. But by far the biggest circle, and where most things in your life will go, is in the everything else circle. Once you understand this, the goal is for you to focus all of your time, energy, and attention on the inner two circles, and leave everything in the everything else circle alone. Your time and your energy are finite, so any time spent on one thing is time not spent on another thing. And that means all the time and energy you spend on things outside of your spheres of control or influence is inherently wasted, since you can't control or influence those things anyway. Pretty logical. But why do we get tripped up with this? First thing is you often think you have control or influence over things that you really don't. And then even more challenging on top of that is that letting go of things that you can't actually affect change on can be very hard for your ego. You want to be able to change things. It feels like you should have control or influence over things that have control or influence over you. But that's not how life works. You have to understand and accept this because it frees up your energy, and then you can focus that energy on the things that you actually can change. And this is when things really take off. The second self-help principle that will actually allow you to create the change you're looking for in your life builds off of the spheres of influence, and it's called having a to-don't list. Lots of people have to-do lists, which seems reasonable. You've got a lot to do. But the thing about to-do lists is that they're never ending. In the year 2025, as a working adult, juggling a job, maybe two, household responsibilities, potentially kids, family, social life, your health, a ton more, there is never an end in sight. So to-do lists feel productive. They feel like a necessary way to organize this nonstop onslaught and make it even potentially possible for you to tackle it all. Except that you can't tackle it all. Your to-do list never ends. So what good is starting a to-do list that you'll never actually to-do? What tends to happen in practice is it just keeps growing and growing, getting more overwhelming and more daunting. And you just end up picking and choosing what parts you want to actually handle, since you can't possibly do everything on it at once anyway. So it becomes an exercise in futility. You're just picking and choosing, adding more things, choosing the things that you want to do. It doesn't really serve a purpose. Instead, I've found that a to-don't list can actually be much more impactful. A to-don't list is exactly what it sounds like, a list of things not to do. I found this to be an actual needle mover for both me and my clients for a few reasons. Most importantly, it works because humans are creatures of habits, and we tend to fall into similar patterns. So think about a habit you've tried to build or a change you've tried to make. Maybe something like exercising more, writing your book, building a side business. When you think about your past efforts and why they didn't work out, if you zoom out, there's a good chance you'll notice a pattern of what's keeping you stuck. A pattern of, I'm doing good until blank happens. You might say, well, I'm great at sticking to my diet until I'm stressed at work and I throw it all away on a binge. For me, I know it's, I start writing my book, but then I start thinking about marketing and who's going to buy it, and it all gets so overwhelming, I just fizzle out. So in these instances, it's much less about not knowing what to do, and much more about not falling into the familiar traps that are going to keep you stuck. It's not about grocery shopping, meal prepping, getting 10,000 steps. Like, yes, that's important, but you know that. The real difference maker is not using greasy fast food as a coping mechanism during moments of high stress. For me, writing my book, obviously I need to be writing every day. Having writing on my to-do list isn't really telling me anything new. But if I have on my to-don't list, do not get distracted on marketing. Do not think about sales. This keeps me from getting distracted on and focusing on things that seem important but actually aren't in the moment, because marketing a book that's only 1/10 written really doesn't have a point. Which do you think is going to be more impactful? Taking that distraction off of my plate allows me to actually do the thing I need to do, which is write. Adding more things to your to-do list is overwhelming and it weighs you down. Putting things on your to-don't list is lightening and it frees you up to have more energy to focus on the things that matter. And the third of the 3 self-help tips that will actually help you is building failure into your plans for success. If you're a regular to the show, this is not a new idea. You'll know that I say often failure is a part of success. Failure is a part of the process. Literally, there is no success without failure. And this isn't just me. Studies have shown that people and organizations who end up succeeding in the long term are the ones who not only account for this, but actually build failure into their processes. For example, I was on a call with an executive the other day who wants to get his health under control, which is nothing new. I deal with this stuff all the time. So I asked him, what might that look like with your busy schedule? And his initial thought was, well, I want to be working out 5 times a week. That's the goal. But I know realistically things get so hectic, I haven't been able to keep up with that pace. And usually I end up getting like 2. So I asked him, and then what happens? And he said, well, when I only get 2 times, I tend to get discouraged and I give up because I can't keep up with that goal I set of 5. So like I said in point 2, I'm starting to see a familiar pattern. Setting up this unrealistic goal was only serving to discourage him and set him up for disappointment. So I offered a different route. Instead, we set the goal of 2 to 4 days, since 2 was the amount he was realistically getting consistently. And since we also know that he wanted more than that, we set a stretch goal of 3 or 4. 5 wasn't really necessary. So his initial plan was, I'm only successful if I get 5 days. And then he would hit 2 or 3 and he would feel like a failure. Instead, when we made the goal 2 days at minimum and maybe 4, it folds in what he would have considered to be failure previously. And now what would have been failure is actually part of success. And I know what you're thinking. It's the same thing that he said when I suggested this. He said, but that's not enough. 2 times isn't enough. And the thing is that we often overestimate how much we need to do to actually move the needle. This is especially true in fitness, where people think they need to work out an hour long 5 times a week, but it's everywhere. You can usually get a lot more done with a lot less than you think you need. Potentially, more importantly though, is the fact that it's simply more realistic. And it builds the inevitabilities of life into the plan, rather than trying to plan for perfection and being disappointed when life happens. And that will allow him to be more consistent in the long run. Because yeah, some weeks he'll only get 2 workouts, but some weeks he'll get 3, and some he'll get 5. And while the weeks that he does get 5 will feel great, the weeks where he gets 2 or 3, they won't feel like failure. They'll feel like a win, since that's all part of the plan. And that means that those weeks where he only got 2 or 3, now will keep motivating him to move forward. Where in the past, that would have been an excuse to talk himself out of what he was doing. For instance, a busy work week where he only had time to work out 2 times, in the past, he might have looked at that, seen his schedule and said, well, what's the point? It's not 5, it's only 2. I might as well not work out at all. Or coming off of a week where he only got 3 workouts and then 2 the previous week before that, he might say, well, I'm never actually doing what I need to do anyway. Why even try this week? But instead, by factoring in failure and only planning for 2 days a week, now 2 or 3 or 4, they're all wins. They're all part of the picture of success. So now, maybe he has 2 workouts scheduled that week. And then maybe a meeting cancels and he gets to squeeze in a 3rd. That's 3 workouts that he got in because he factored in failure, rather than if he was striving for perfection, shooting for 5, and he would have got 0. So my action step for you this week is to simply choose one of these 3 self-help actions to implement into one of your goals. You can focus on your spheres of influence, you can create a to-don't list, or you can factor failure into your plan and goal setting. As you might have noticed, all of these are closely related and they do build on each other. However, I wouldn't advise trying everything at once because it can be too much change too fast. Slow and steady wins the race, and implementing just one of these will be enough to move you forward towards your goals, and you can layer more on once that happens. The self-help genre can be great. On the whole, it's surely done more to help than to harm for many people. But it can also be frustrating when you're inundated with so many quote-unquote answers and you're trying your best, but you're not getting the result you're after. I hope this episode has helped to simplify things for you by giving you 3 specific actionable pieces of advice to follow. Quiet out all of that other noise. Narrow your focus. Put your head down and see what can happen in 6 months. That is change made easy.
Before you go, I just have to ask you for a huge favor. If you enjoyed or got value from this episode at all, then take a moment and leave a rating and review in the podcast app that you're listening or watching on. If you like the show and you want me to continue to create more episodes and be able to get awesome guests that will help make changing your life easier, then this is the best way you can show support. You can leave a 5-star review on iTunes like Eliza K, who said, This podcast is both warm and inviting, but real enough to push and motivate me. Thank you, Eliza. Or you can be like Dalton, who said, Paul is an amazing host, and his podcast is a must listen. Thank you, Dalton. And thank you to all of the over 100 people who have taken the time to rate and review this show 5 stars on iTunes, or the dozens who have left 5-star reviews on Spotify. It only takes a minute, and it helps me grow, it helps me reach a new audience, and it lets me know that this is helping someone, which just feels good. All you have to do is go to the show page of whatever app you're listening to and hit the little 5 stars. Or go to the comments section on YouTube and boom, that's it. And if you really want to show love, take a screenshot when you do it and tag me in your stories on social media at Change Made Easy, and I'll shout you out in an upcoming episode. All right, go leave that rating, and I'll see you back here every Tuesday and Thursday with new episodes of Change Made Easy.